Good morning, everybody. My name is Shawna Suckow, and we have Emily, I believe, who wants to hop on and say a few opening words before we kick off this morning.
Well,
Emily?
Shawna, thank you for joining us. We are very excited to hear from you and get a fresh look at the future. I know everyone's ready to move forward and think about the post-pandemic world. And again, we're grateful to have you with us this morning. And it's very exciting to see the chats already being used by everyone. So continue to engage with the chat. And Shawna, I will let you take it from here.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Greetings from sunny, Minnesota. Actually, it's not too bad today. I hope everybody has their beverage and their energy. We are going to delve into what is going on in the world and what we can do about it right now. If we're in sales or marketing or we own a business or whatnot, it's a crazy time. And so I study consumer behavior, and I'm fascinated with how things change depending on what's at play in our world. And I can tell you, I've never seen a more swift period of dramatic change in my lifetime, really. So I want to introduce to you the third wave. Why do I call what we're in right now the third wave? Well, it is because I believe, well, I see this as our third major market upheaval, major shift in consumer behavior this century. The first two waves were 9/11, definitely changed consumer behavior permanently. And then the next shift was the Great Recession of '08 through '12, which absolutely changed how we buy. And we saw major shifts at that time, like people stopped answering the phone and people stopped responding to email. And now we've got this third wave that kind of smacks us in the head. And man, this one's a doozy. So there are some silver linings. I'm not going to do all doom and gloom. I'm going to share with you some predictions for the future at the end. We are going to have some breakouts today where you can share your own opinions and so forth, and what you plan to do moving forward. If you have any thoughts or plans that you want to share. You don't have to be on camera. I call this Hair and Makeup Wednesday. I try to load all of my calls and Zooms, anything I'm on video, onto Wednesdays. So happy Hair and Makeup Wednesday. Let's get started. So what is different about this time around? What is crazy? What is impacting us about this one that is shifting things permanently? Well, I'm going to talk about 4 things that are different about this wave. The culture shift that's happening, what I call splintering of our culture. I'm going to delve into your old high school or college psychology class and talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and why that's important right now in how you sell, and then the dichotomy that's also going on. And then once I explain the what and the why, we're going to get into the how of how we move forward and how we sell and market through this. So the first thing I want to point out is this major culture shift that is underway, and it's permanent. We are working differently. If this looks familiar to any of you, I've got a teenager and a 20-something who are both going to school from home. I've got a dog. I've got a husband working from home today. It just looks different. We shop differently. And anybody, I would like to know, actually, in the chat, are any of you selling business to consumer, or are you more business to business? Because I definitely want to be sure and tailor this for the audience that we have. So go ahead into the chat. You'll see that on your lower right. So far, everybody's B2B. Anybody B2C? Okay. If I don't see, we've got Madeline, who's B2C. Okay, for the most part, we're B2B, but B2C, Madeline, you know how much you have had to change in a really short time. I remember speaking to a group of automotive dealerships in Michigan. I know we've got Harold and a couple others in Michigan. And these automotive dealers were headstrong and rigid. We will not shift to online financing. We will not do that. We want to upsell people, and they had to do that in a really short amount of time. This is going to permanently change our comfort level with shopping for things online, with not stepping into storefronts. And for B2B, this is a whole shift in how you're going to interact with your customers going forward, because a lot of us will continue to work from home. This is the push we all needed to get business owners and bosses comfortable with staff people working from home. And now that they know their staff people can do it, they're going to be rethinking overhead costs. A lot of you, if you're business owners, may be rethinking your overhead costs. Do we actually need people in the office? Do I need this much real estate? So the office is going to change. The way you get a hold of people, they may not have their office phone forwarded to their cell phone. So you may not be able to get a hold of people directly. We really stopped answering the phone back in the last recession. We trained ourselves to not answer the phone so much. Even if it's somebody we know, if we're not in that zone to be doing that at that moment, we're not picking up the phone. So that was a shift. But now we may not even be where our phone calls are going. We may choose not to forward that, or it may not be a capability, whatever, but it's going to be harder to reach people by phone. Interestingly, I'll jump ahead a little bit. Interestingly, though, cold calling, I think, is making a resurgence because a lot of us got bored during lockdown and during the stay at home, and we started wanting to talk to more people. So I've had lovely conversations with salespeople and the guy from Verizon and whoever over the phone, just because we're bored. The way we dress, different. How many of you in the chat are wearing casual clothes, at least on your bottom half? How many of you are wearing something that doesn't button, it just pulls right on? How many of you are wearing those kind of pants today? Even though I call this the COVID mullet, where we are business on the top and party on the bottom, comfort on the bottom. And then as soon as our Zoom calls are over, forget about it. And also, I want to know from Matt says he's not telling. How many of you have gotten really comfortable with your coworkers enough to where, ladies, maybe you've appeared without makeup on or with your hair, crazy, or you have appeared just in regular casual, sweatpants, or, I'm just about to go do yoga on my lunch hour. In the chat, how many of you have been a lot more casual, even with your coworkers during all of this? Give it up. So the way that we dress, thank you, Matt, for interacting. You get a prize today. In business clothes, just in case. Okay, Mike, just in case you have to make a visit to a customer. Okay. So the way that we dress really is changing because of all of this. We're becoming more casual. The way we talk is changing. There are so many new words in our vocabulary that weren't there before. And so many. Who's up for the word pivot today? Now, I'm so tired of the word pivot and the word unprecedented that rather than scream, I have my screaming goat here. I either do that when I hear those words, or now I've really just turned them into a drinking game. So whatever you got, I have water here in my Rick and Morty glass. If I say pivot or unprecedented or any other term that you're just sick of hearing, you can go ahead and take a drink. Joshua, yes, he says he feels more productive when he dresses for the office. I have started to actually get dressed more in real clothes and like get fancy a couple days a week now. Not trying to push my luck, but yeah, we are more productive. I think we just feel more ready to tackle the day, right? So our vocabulary has changed and we are becoming less professional. I don't mean that in a negative way. I think it is a positive because we are revealing our humanity more throughout this pandemic. It used to be where if you are on a video call, which was kind of rare before, right? But if you were on a video call or on a webinar or something, and somebody's spouse walked through, like my son is in the kitchen now getting a snack. But if your cat walked across the keyboard or something, you would think, oh my gosh, that's so unprofessional. I'm so embarrassed. And now we just stop and go, oh, tell me about your cat, or oh, that must have been your husband, or it's less of it's less of a slight, I guess, because this is the world we all live in now, and I don't think this is going to go back to normal. Well, normal. I don't think we're going to go back to being uber professional. And that's another shift that you have to be aware of in how you write, how you talk, how you social media, how you advertise, all of these things. We are becoming less professional and more casual. And I want to show you this beautiful ad and get your thoughts on this.
An important decision is afoot. This man is about to buy tires on TireRack.com. Tire Rack is the leading online retailer of tires in North America and a repository of advice and expert reviews. And it's done! All that's left is to arrange for safe, easy installation at one of our independent recommended installers. Well, I guess he did that too. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
In the chat, what do you notice about that ad that strikes you as being, that's different from what we saw before the pandemic? So what I see from that is he's just a regular guy. He's got bedhead. He's wearing sweats. He's not wearing shoes. He's on his couch. He's doing something from his phone. He's got snacks on the table in front of him. You don't really see that right now. Yes, Kerwin, it's okay to be a little lazy. It's okay to do stuff from home because we're all doing that right now. And it's so much more casual. And what a great message from Tire Rack that you don't have to venture out. You don't, and they emphasize safety. We're doing this, you can stay at home. This comfort level that we have gained with each other, with how we interact, with how we work, with how we live, not going to go back to the way that it was. We are facing the next normal. So rather than the new normal, drink on that one, it's the next normal. And somebody said in the chat, is normal should be another one of those words that goes away, because what is that anymore, right? Which, yes, John, it's becoming more mainstream, this type of messaging. And so pay attention to the advertising around you and what gets through to you, because if it's getting through to you, it's rising above all that noise of everybody else who's doing the same thing that they've always done. And we need to be different if we want to break through and rise above that noise. So pay attention to that stuff around you going forward. Just give it a week and really take notice to the things on your social media, on the things on your TV, wherever you see advertising.
An important.
So that was the culture shift. And now I want to talk about splintering and what's going on with these different groups that have splintered out. It used to be that a one-size-fits-all message would work for everybody. And it was easy, certainly, if you're on the sales or marketing side, it's easy to do a one-size-fits-all message. But now, wow, there is something going on in our world that is, I think, also not going to change for a long time. And that is, we have splintered off into so many subgroups based on politics, based on science, based on generations, based on geography, based on whether your government, wherever you are locally or in your state or in your country. I know we have others from, hey, Denmark, depending on what your governors, how they've handled the past year, and whether you agree with things or not. This is causing a lot of splintering. And what works for one splinter group may offend another splinter group, or they may ignore it because it's so far off their radar as to what their reality is right now. And I don't think this is going to change for a while. So I want to now switch. I'll give you some examples of splintering a little bit later, but I want to switch now and talk about the third thing that's at play right now as to why and what's happening, and that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In the chat, how many of you remember this? I'll show you the pyramid. How many of you remember this from a class you once took many years ago? So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is this pyramid of the very basic human needs on the bottom, all the way through the stages that we go through to ultimate self-actualization. I am the best form of humanity that I can be. During times of stress, we sink down to the basic level where all we're concerned about is food, shelter, clothing, our basic needs. We see this every time there's a natural disaster. We saw this in Texas. We saw this just in Texas this past week, where people's basic needs weren't being met. They can't care about anything else if they don't have running water. We saw this with the mad rush for toilet paper. People freaked out, and they weren't thinking about where they're going to make their next major equipment purchase at work when they're freaking out about toilet paper. So we all, I think, sunk down out of fear to the red zone. And then when, depending on where you are geographically, if you're in Australia, you probably never even entered that red zone for long. If you are in New York or California or some places, India, places where there have been scary outbreaks, Brazil, you're maybe still in the red zone. For the rest of us, some of us sooner rather than later stuck a toe in the orange zone. Okay, now our basic needs are met. We're just worried about safety. Okay, is it safe to go to the grocery store? I have access to food, but I'm just going to have it delivered. And then some of us got into the yellow, where we really crave that human face-to-face interaction. Social media is great. Zoom calls are great. Wow, but Zoom fatigue set in, and we really crave face-to-face. And so these are the people that feel safe enough to then go out to bars and restaurants and movie theaters and have parties and all these things. And again, this is geographic. This is whether you believe in masks. This is where you, whether you believe in the science, what your government is doing, what generation you are, if you have comorbidities. See, so all this is at play right now. The green zone is where we are so comfortable with the rest that we're okay making major purchases. This is where we hope our customers are, right? Always. We always hope they're okay. Where they may not be okay at home, they may be okay at work, and vice versa, depending on their job situation and whether their company is doing really well through the pandemic. Okay, so you now, with splintering and with the cultural shift, and now knowing this and the psychology of your customers, you now have to get into a little bit of a more complicated sales process, because your customers may be at different places at work, in their personal life, depending on where they're coming from. And this has created the last one of these, which is this huge dichotomy. Depending on where you fall in any number of spectrums, how about the economic spectrum? So we, especially if you're B2C, wow, you maybe struggled, maybe you're still struggling. Those of you who are B2B, your end users, maybe they were really struggling, maybe they still are. Depending on the segment that you're in. And so it has been rough. And there's nothing you can do if they don't have any money coming in to push your sales, right? So meanwhile, there are companies like, my husband works for this luxury bed company that's only in the US, but we'll call it Schmeep Schmumber. But they just had their best year ever. They're having their best first quarter. It is crazy how some people can't make ends meet and they're going to food shelters, while at the very same time, this company that sells beds that can retail for US $12,000 are killing it. So there's also this splinter group. So welcome to the craziness that is our new world if we're in sales and marketing. So that's the why and that's the what. Now let's get into the how. So how can we do our jobs better? How can we be successful throughout this pandemic that in some places of the world is next to nothing? In other places of the world, we're used to this crazy roller coaster, like in the States, depending on where you're at. It falls anywhere along that spectrum. So we've got that to deal with. So there are 3 ways forward based on the consumer behavior shifts that are afoot. And we will get to breakouts in just a bit, but I want to talk to you first about some ideas for the way forward. And the first one is we have to connect better than ever before. We may not have the luxury like Mike, who's in his nice clothes because he may have to go actually see a customer. We may not have that luxury. We may not be comfortable ourselves going out with face-to-face to our customers, or they may not be comfortable. We have to really, really hone how we connect and how our sales team connects with their customers. They have to connect differently because a major part of how they connect has been ripped out from under them. And we've also got this fun statistic. Now, this started during the last recession, this distrust of organizations, consumers, which means buyers, B2B buyers too, because they're consumers. We're all consumers. Our distrust in companies, in organizations of all kinds started rising during the last recession. Why? Very simply because a lot of companies and major organizations, auto manufacturers, banks, government sectors were failing. And did they get left holding the bag? Or did we get left holding the bag? We did as consumers, right? So we kind of started becoming more standoffish against companies. And this shift that is now 10 years old meant that we had to really start humanizing ourselves as salespeople more than ever before, because they would trust a person before they would ever trust a company. And so that shifted how we had to humanize ourselves. And now, with distrust at an all-time high, we really have to take a more casual, humanized approach. Because coupled with the fact that they are more casual and humanized at home, and this distrust of companies is so high, we really have to start, finally, if you haven't started doing it yet, finally, we have permission to just talk like normal people in all things. And in fact, it's not just permission, I think it's a requirement now. If you want to rise above the noise, you have to be Tire Rack that's showing a regular guy making an order, rather than using models in their advertising like most companies feel like they have to do. We're just regular people. We are in this collectively shared human experience that has sucked for a year now, in some places longer. And man, this is a great equalizer. So when I say we're all in this together, that's another drinker. It's true, but what that means is we have to hit this distrust head on. We have to hit this new shift head on, and connect better. How? Well, there are many ways to do it. I've honed this down to 6, that if you incorporate these in your messaging, whether it's visual, whether it's verbal, whether it's written, you are going to have a better chance of getting noticed and earning a response, because it is so easy for all of us right now when we're being sold at to just tune it out, right? This is 10 years ago when we started getting flooded like never before with sales messages because of the recession. Well, Budgets have been cut again, and salespeople are doing what they can that's cheap, and that is calling and emailing. And so that flood is happening again. And so if you are calling or emailing, you have to rise above the noise. You have to do something different. You have to speak differently. You have to leverage things that we know are working. And these 6 things are working right now. If you leverage family or friends, and keep this in mind also, I'm not going to talk a lot about LinkedIn today, but I could do a whole day on leveraging LinkedIn and changing your profile and humanizing yourself and changing your profile photos and your description and talking like a real person. But leveraging family and friends, talking about nostalgia. If you have a family-owned business, who has a family-owned business? Who has a business that's really old? Type in the chat. How old is your business, or are you owned by family? Because if you have either of those things to your advantage, now's the time to leverage those. And Mike, thank you. Yes, many customers can't believe our lead times have grown. Business is good in many sectors, but yeah, plant efficiencies are crazy right now, right? Shipping, crazy right now. Mike Day, you're a 3rd generation business, 72 years, 50 years family owned from Matt, family owned Harold for 56 years. Whoo! Nostalgia and family and friends, use that to your advantage. If you have old pictures, we've been around through lots of market upheavals, and we are still going to be there for your company through this and when this is all over. I just got goosebumps. You can leverage those things and use that nostalgia, use those black and white pictures that maybe, hopefully you have. Talk about your family and friends. When my great grandfather founded this company, he never imagined that today we would be going through what we're going through. But he went through this, and you can leverage that stuff. Pets. I'm going to show you the most brilliant email solicitation that I received that used his pet, and man, that worked on me. And even if you're not a pet owner, find a pet, rent a pet, borrow a pet, leverage pets in your communication, because it's another great humanizer and equalizer. Talk about the way forward. Acknowledge that, man, this past year has sucked. And we can't all be wine and roses. And I think so much advertising fails because they're not acknowledging the reality of what we're all going through. And it's okay to do that while still being optimistic. And humor, of course, I think is an appropriate way to deal with many situations, because when we don't have a lot, we still have our sense of humor, right? This is the email. This was brilliant. Let me move my picture out of the way. You can drag my picture too to anywhere on your screen if I'm blocking any of your view. His email, Jason said, "Hey, first name, haha, just kidding. We don't know each other. Unwanted emails suck." He's talking like a real person. So here's a cute picture of my dog, Rab, wearing my slippers. I hope that buys me 5 more seconds of your time. And then he gets into the pitch, but it's not that pitchy. It's very brief. He doesn't talk about a million features and benefits. He doesn't list bullet points. He just talks about 2 sentences. And then, cheers, Jason. And there's Reb wearing his slippers. I am not a prospect of Jason's. I don't have a big staff I don't have need for a tool like this. Normally this would be a delete. Instead, what I did, I responded to Jason and I said, I teach this stuff. This is the best email ever. And I just got this a couple weeks ago, guys. This is the best email ever. And I'm not a prospect, but here are some suggestions. And if I now know of anybody that, if I come across somebody that asks about this, I'm going to refer them to Jason. A brilliant friend of mine said a few years ago, I would rather be referred 5 times than have someone buy from me once. So this guy got me to become a referrer, even though I don't really know this guy. Never seen his face, never had a conversation with him except via email. This is the beauty of leveraging those tools to your favor, because you don't know what's going to get somebody to take notice of you. And for this, it was the way he spoke. He used humor, he used pets, he acknowledged that some things suck. He talked like a real person. Wow, this checked so many boxes for me. So what works for one prospect may not work for another. We've got all sorts of things at play. We don't know exactly where your prospect is along Maslow's hierarchy. We don't know what splinter groups they're in unless you really do your research. And hopefully your prospect group, your target audience, is a very narrow demographic, either geographically or vertically or market-wise, where you know them pretty well. But even your past clients who you've known for years, this has put us all through a blender, and we don't know where they are, where they sit emotionally, financially on the other side. So try to check as many of these boxes as you can in whatever you're doing, because we need something to get through. What we cannot do is continue to cycle through the same strategic, professional, bullet pointed, uber, big words, emails. Dear Mr. Jones, I am delighted to make your acquaintance today. Blah, 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 blah. That's what your customer's hearing. So we have to do things differently, or hope you can hear my little goat. Amazon, I love him. So bottom line, how can you expect to get through in this new era of extreme humanization unless you and your team are doing this as well in all things? It is time to rethink everything you got and throw it all out there. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to throw you into some breakout rooms here for a little bit. We're just going to spend maybe 5 minutes. I want you to talk about what you've seen so far, what's resonating, maybe one thing that you are willing to try differently as a result of what you've heard, what you're experiencing with your own customers, etc. So I am going to throw us into breakout rooms. I will give you a minute's notice when I'm going to zap you back into this main space. Okay. So when you see something come up, just click accept to join the room. Okay. And here we go. Welcome back, everybody. I love seeing your faces. Let's go ahead and if you're comfortable, if it happens to be your hair and makeup Wednesday as it is mine, then by all means, share yourself on screen right now. So I want to ask in the chat, and I would love to hear what one thing really resonated with you, or what you're gonna try differently as to what we've heard so far, or take yourself off of mute. And I am going to remove my pin so I can see y'all. Take yourself off of mute, and if you're willing to share. Okay, how about this? I have a prize for whoever shares first.
I think the big piece that we were talking about was the just basically listening. And if you're calling and trying to talk to them about your big shiny piece, that's not, it's not going to matter. It's going to be understanding what they need.
Gotcha. Yes, exactly. And oops, I'm sorry, Harold. Yes, I did stop your video. I will unstop that in a moment. But Kevin, do you want to see what you've won? You won a prize.
Yay.
So you are the proud new owner.
Is it a screaming goat?
Of a virtual prize. No, it is a one-of-a-kind virtual prize. It is Rick Hoskins socks.
Nice.
Kerwin, I know you're on, and this was almost your face. Could have been you. Somehow at the last minute, I made both. They're virtual, so you don't actually get the socks. They're virtual. I can send you a picture of this if you want to print it out, just so you always have them with you. But congratulations on
Nice.
wonderful.
Actually,
wonderful
I'm
win.
thinking that's something that we might all kind of take to is get some Rick Hoskins socks. They might sell really well. So
I think that is a great fundraiser for your organization. I think you absolutely, every new chairperson, you got to go with the socks. Okay, what else? Who else wants to share something that they picked up on that they're going to try?
Through this, you got to accept change and a willingness to adapt to the moving market. We're in something that's on a constant move right now. We've got to accept it.
Yes, constant. And it's not like we're going to settle on a new strategy. Sadly, I know we want to do that. We want to settle on a new strategy that's just going to work for the next 5 years. This is a work in progress, just like, back in March and April, I was using the words pivot and new normal, and every one of us was, and we're like, yeah, we all need to pivot. And now if you use that word, please stop. Because we're all so tired of hearing certain phrases. And so we all have pivoted away from the word pivot.
I think patience.
By the way, just a quick lesson. Who's a Rick and Morty fan? If you are doing video, which I hope you are, video calls, video sales, video emails to your prospects, make sure that you have as many talking points as possible in your background. Because this back here gives you an impression of me that a blank wall wouldn't. And if you have a blank wall and you don't want to hang artwork, get a virtual background. Doug, you've got a great virtual background there. But I use this as a conversation piece because anybody that's a Rick and Morty fan is going to remember that I'm drinking out of this glass or that I'm a child at heart. Either way, I'm good with that. So let's get back to, thank you. We are going to have more time for sharing, but let's get back to what's going on and what we can do to target these splinter groups, right? Because there's so many of them. And feel free to stay on camera if you want, but go ahead and mute yourself if you're going to have any background noise. Okay, so targeting these splinter groups is absolutely a challenge. It is about, as you already brilliantly touched on, striking the right tone, because you can't be, selling, I don't know how much your equipment costs, an $80,000 piece of equipment. Is that realistic when somebody's just not in the right headspace? So take a look at these 4 images, and in the chat, I want you to tell me which one of these resonates most with you, because it's going to be different depending on what splinter groups you are in and where your head is out right now. So go ahead and in the chat, which one of these resonates with you? We've got in the upper left, girlfriends or sisters. We've got a little boy fishing. We got toes in the sand. We got the woman with the high-end shopping. Now, maybe a couple of these speak to you. Does one of these turn you off? 2 of these turn me off right now. The high-end shopping, because I am on the conservative side of COVID. I am like, shopping that's not online, eep. And these ladies, their heads are too close to each other. So I hope they're in a quarantine bubble. This is me. See, now those might have resonated with other people, like, oh, I'm so glad I get to see my family or my friends right now, or I can't wait until I can. So it's just a matter of which splinter group you are in. So generally speaking, the toes in the sand and the little boy fishing are the safer images here. Okay, so there are safer ones, and this is nostalgia. Everybody is like, get me to the beach. Let's do this again. Which one of these do you not like, if any? For me, it is the upper right. Now, for my kids, for my nieces and nephews who are 20-somethings, they're doing this. They love this. They don't want to disconnect. For me, that freaks me out. There are too many people at that table. They're too close together. That's clearly a restaurant. Our restaurants in Minnesota aren't allowing that right now, but man, I long for that. So it's all about the tone you strike when you're using these types of images or when you're talking about it. The dog, love the dog, the nostalgia of the cassette tape. I would make a joke and say, I'm old enough to remember what that is. And I remember how to rewind it if you don't have a machine. Who knows how to rewind that without a machine?
The pencil.
I gotta laugh from someone. Carol does, right? The pencil, Josh, right? You're with me. So that got you to laugh. So I just made a little bit of a human connection with you that if I had approached you with some other image that didn't strike you right, maybe would have, or on somebody who's my kid's age. Actually, my daughter, who is 20, she has a cassette player. This was all the rage a couple years ago. Like, okay. So actually she would dig that, thinking I'm really hip, although saying the word hip makes me totally unhip. Okay, so I'm gonna play a video and tell me what jumps out to you from this video message.
We've proven time and again our community rises with each challenge. Neighbors, businesses coming together to support one another and prove we're
Sorry, I just muted because I have to
in
see.
this together. We've missed you experiencing our community, our heritage and history, our restaurants and breweries, festivals and arts, attractions and outdoor spaces. Macon Soul is intact and is part of who we are and what we do. Although we've just experienced a difficult time, we'll be here when you're ready to visit. We can't wait to be part of your next adventure.
What appealed to you from that? You can take yourself off of mute and just tell me, or you can put it in the chat. There were some things, again, because I'm on the conservative side, that I was like, oh, too soon. But then there are some things that I long for. And the fact at the end, they said, we'll be here when you're ready. Brilliant. Love that message. They understand that I might not be ready, but they'll be there when I am. I love that message. So what feels appropriate for them? You have to, more than ever, get into their head, what feels appropriate to them, and do more research than you may have done in the past, which means we are now all about, which I know in your market, if you're selling expensive equipment or really targeted equipment, then you are doing your research, and you have a very slim demographic. I'm assuming the higher up, the higher in price points, what you're selling goes. So, but we have to do more research now on the human behind the company. We can't just research the company. So do your research on your humans and do more quality outreach than quantity outreach, because quantity outreach, unless you're really nailing it, like my friend Jason with the dog and the slippers, you know, it's going to fall on a lot of deaf ears, and you'll know because you'll hear crickets back. So more quality outreach based on more research. Now, also targeting your splinter groups. One of you said you might have a client meeting. So great. Are your clients comfortable with live sales calls or virtual? Are they comfortable if you hold an in-person event? Like if somebody invited me to an in-person event down the street from me right now, I'd be like, well, that's not appropriate. We're in, you know, Minnesota is very conservative in the cities. In the rural areas, we're not. So again, geographic. Are they more interested right now in education, or are they interested in socializing? This is something that's going to be different. You know your prospect, you know your clients, and keep in mind your clients have probably changed. So you may not know them now to the degree that you should. Are they more interested right now in mentoring or networking? I'm going to give you some ideas, because this is all about, as was it Mike? I'm sorry, who said this is about kind of moving forward and keeping an open mind, really. Now I show you this. This is gonna age me a lot. If you can see this, this is not, my husband said, are you doing heroin? No, I'm not doing heroin. This is from the Matrix. This is how old I am. Who remembers the scene with Keanu Reeves where the kids are sitting around bending spoons with their mind? And Keanu Reeves' character asked them, how are you doing that? And they said, the key right now is to remember there is no spoon. This is a construct. The whole thinking outside the box, throw away the box. The box doesn't work anymore because we are in such uncharted territory. So a couple of ideas on throwing away the box. There were companies that had advertised in the Super Bowl for 37 years, one of them, that did not advertise this year. Who can name one of them? Like major advertisers who pulled their advertising. Budweiser, Coke, Pepsi, all of these major companies, they said, we're not going to spend money on advertising. We're going to spend money on COVID relief. Wrong. It was a brilliant marketing tactic. All of those companies I mentioned, their sales are up. Budweiser didn't advertise Budweiser. They advertised all their other brands. They have the money. It was a brilliant marketing move because everybody thought, oh, that's so awesome of them. And it filled them with goodwill. They probably went out and bought more Budweiser, Coke, and Pepsi. What a great move. They have enough money to both advertise and support COVID education, COVID relief. But wow, they threw away, there was no spoon anymore for them. Wow. So throwing away the box, what does that look like? That means rather than trying to get your client on a phone call, on a one-on-one, or trying to get them on a Zoom call, we have such Zoom fatigue. We as prospects, we need a good reason. We need something compelling to get us out of Zoom fatigue. And I thank you all for deciding this was compelling enough to join me today. I hope I'm giving you value. But some ways that you can throw away the box, we've probably at this point all been part of a virtual wine tasting. But people are doing different things now where, Kerwin, I don't know if you are a mixologist, if you're still on the call, but you know, maybe Kerwin, when he's giving an update on the association, you do it at happy hour instead of Tuesday or Wednesday at 2 o'clock, which is when we always do those things. Throw away that box. Let's have a happy hour. We're just going to talk as human beings about what's going on. And Kerwin is going to show you how to make his favorite drink. That is more compelling.
Which could be very uncomplicated, but maybe pour a glass of a beer or a wine into a glass, but I could try.
That would be hilarious, actually, Kerwin. That's throwing away the box. He's going to make his favorite drink. Glass, beer, here's how I make it. You know, that's awesome. I love it. So this is just an idea that's compelling enough. Now, take a look at this. This was a what do you call it? Aromatherapy session. That it only got, the woman in the upper right is leading the session. I still have my thing. She sent us all our own custom mix before this therapy session, this aromatherapy session. And she just has 8 of us on this call, but I'm the MC, so I don't count, but the 7 people that are on this call have spending power of millions and millions of dollars. So it doesn't matter that there weren't 100 people. Again, quantity in this case over quality, and something really unique that they said yes to this when they've said no to so many other things. This got them on this call. And then she, at the end, asked for advice rather than pitching them. If I were targeting clients like you, what would you recommend that I do? Wow. So no pitch, and she did something really different. Wow. Okay, and throwing away the box, just some other ideas. Right here, you see somebody dressed up as Bob Ross. We had a virtual Bob Ross goat painting party where we had goats on video and we painted goats, and it was such a hoot, and people loved it and are still talking about it. with the Santa hats. You see me on the bottom and a drag queen named Cacophony Daniels on the top. This was pajama drag queen bingo in the evening. And she sang Christmas carols, and the bingo boards were songs instead of numbers. People loved it. It blew their minds. In the lower left, we've got the woman on the left who's showing how to make a virtual smoothie. And on the lower right is a virtual tour. It was in the middle of a meeting. Okay, now we're going to take 20 minutes and we're going to go visit this coffee farm, this sustainable coffee farm in Costa Rica that is a small family-owned farm. And we're going to hear about how they are harvesting coffee, which is right now in February at the height of harvest season. And it was so cool. So what can you do that's compelling to get your clients, your prospects to say yes to even interacting with you? And then you can do the pitch, or then you humanize, or you just are strengthening those relationships. So here are some ideas. It's got one thing in common: video, because it's what we have right now. You may not be able to do the office pop-in ever again because your customers may not be there ever again, right? Except for if you sell to, you might be selling to warehouses, to manufacturing companies where you know they're going to be there because that's where they make whatever it is that they make. So that may be different for you, but you may have an easier time getting them on video. Video email, look up a service called dubb.com. They have a free version where you can send a video of you that comes into their email inbox, and it's got a little bit of movement to it. And they click on it, it goes through their spam filters because it's whitelisted by Dubb. There are a number of services, but try a video email because it gets noticed. Video tours of your factory, of your warehouse, video experiences like I talked about with the aromatherapy, contests, happy hour, video ambassadors where you get your customers to lead a session on how they use your equipment rather than you. This is cool. So pick one. I'm sorry, I've run us out of time to do another breakout, but I would love to know from these in the chat, or take yourself off of mute, from all of this today, what are you going to try? And maybe I'll throw you some virtual Kerwin socks because I did make them. I'm going to pull those up while I say what's next in buyer behavior.
All right, I'll speak if there's virtual Kerwin socks out there.
Yes, John.
No, but I was in the first breakout, I was telling them that's what we've actually found a lot of success this last year is videos. So people will very much, even if you have to send it by email, they're willing to watch a video, and we try to keep it under 60 seconds, but
yes,
we got a lot of positive analytics and a lot of positive response where people were deleting through regular emails, but they're willing to watch a quick little video. And it caught enough attention of some clients that just something that they picked up on that it made them want to reach back out. So that's worked for us.
That's the whole point, right? That's all we need, is to plant that seed so they want to reach back out right now. That is the mountain that we have to climb, and we can climb that mountain. So what's next in buyer behavior? I'm going to make a few predictions, and then I will stay on to answer any questions that you all have, since I didn't get to throw you into breakouts to talk with each other a second time. Home officing is going to stay. Even if it's part-time, I think this is going to be here to stay. Keeping it casual in all things is here to stay. Cautious spending in some categories for now, because there's still a little bit of uncertainty about what's next. But there is hope. Finally, I'm calling 2021 the year of hope. There is hope finally in the vaccines that we will get back to normal drink. As we move up Maslow's hierarchy, we are going to need to meet in groups again. So start planning for your summer or fall meetups with your clients, because they're going to get bombarded with invitations because everybody's going to think it's a good idea at the same time. So if you're thinking about this, get in early. But best of all, welcome to the Roaring 20s. Just like after World War I, in the 20s, after all that all of that struggle and strife and financial woes and, being away from family members. They had the roaring 20s, and we are going to have the same thing. It's going to be hopefully an 8-year party after we get through this year, and spending is going to be up, and hopefully it doesn't end the way that the last roaring 20s ended. Yikes. So thank you. Thank you, Kerwin. Thank you, Emily, for reaching out to me and considering me to do this. I hope I've left you all with food for thought and some value today. And for those of you that need to drop off, please, unless Kerwin or Emily, did you have any words, any announcements to make or whatnot?
No, Sean, this is Kerwin. Yeah, I really appreciated how interactive you were. Just how engaging you were with the audience, and a couple people direct messaged me how practical this was, and it's not just one more Zoom call that we've been on. I think we took away quite a few things, and I think I'm excited about trying a couple of these here in the next week or two to see how they work. So thanks a lot, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with me. This is my own pivot as a speaker, because I too have to do things differently or I lose my audience. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that very much. Thank you all for coming and sticking around and engaging like you did. It was fun for me too.